Well, g'day. Today I'm going to show you how to install a traveller kit on your Hobie Wave. Now this video goes for about half an hour and it includes a lot of technical information that some of you may not need. But for some of you who have never tackled anything complex before on your boat, I've included everything I think that you might need to install a traveller on your boat. Also on the end of this video there are some hints and tips on how to keep your traveller healthy and how to tidy up the trampoline on your boat. Now the reason I'm doing this video is because my boat came with a traveller already on the boat, and the second time or third time I sailed it was in heavy winds and I tore the traveller track right off the back of the boat. And probably the main reason why I tore that traveller track off the back of the boat was because in the first couple of weeks I had the boat, I replaced the 3-to-1 blocks supplied by Hobie with some good Harkin 6-to-1 blocks that I could really get some good downhaul tension on the back of the sail. So you can imagine sailing with 6-to-1 blocks in really strong winds is going to put a lot of extra pressure on that back bar. Also, on the fifth time out I broke off the cam cleat that comes with the kit. So again I had to replace that with another method on the back of the boat, and I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to show you a different method to attach your traveller track to the boat. It's a method that is different than the one recommended by Hobie. Some of the equipment supplied by Hobie, some of the stainless steel rivets and the screws, well, to me they just don't cut the mustard. Some of them you won't be able to use because you won't have the equipment to use it. But anyway, let's get on with the video and get to the back of the boat where the action is, and I'll show you how to install a traveller that will give you years of enjoyment and trouble-free operation. So, catch you at the back. It might be interesting to note perhaps why the original traveller track got torn out of the rear beam. Well, here's the original track, and these were the little bolts that were in there. I noticed someone else on YouTube has tapped some screw threads into their rear bar and used these bolts. Well, even with these bolts, if you're sailing hard and fast, even these are going to tear out, and I tore out the first 4 bolts on this bar. So that's why I've gone away from this sort of bolt and installed a longer bolt that goes right through the bar. Now when I said that the pot rivets and the screws supplied by Hobie didn't cut the mustard, it isn't quite true. Hobie does supply you with a pot rivet which is made of stainless steel, which is pretty big. And this is my best pot rivet gun. If I put that in there and try and squeeze that, there is absolutely no way that I can do that. So to use this on this track is going to be virtually impossible. Also, to get it down inside the track, again, it's impossible unless you're using some industrial machinery. So what we're going to do is do away with, in fact a friend of mine, to get a bit more purchase on his pot rivet gun, he put a couple of bars on the gun, pulled it tight, and actually broke the pot rivet gun. So what I'm saying is, get rid of the pot rivet gun, get rid of the stainless steel pot rivets. What we're going to use is 3/16 inch, 3-inch long bolts, and these bolts are going to go through the traveller track right through the back bar. And what Hobie says is that you should be securing your bar on every 3rd hole. I'm going to suggest, and in fact the way that I do it is that I do it every 2nd hole. I start off with having 2 bolts at the end here, 2 bolts on the other end, and then start by missing a bolt, put a bolt, miss a bolt, put a bolt, miss a bolt, put a bolt, and so on. That way you're getting this secured nice and tight to your back beam. And also, if you look at when you're sailing, when the traveller, which is here, which will go in here soon, when the traveller is out to there, you've got it out there in really strong winds. And it's probably got the most amount of pull. So that out here is wanting to pull that bar. You're trying to pull that traveller track. Now because the bar ends here, I would reckon it's under most of its pressure here. Hence I've put in 2 bolts on each end. Now as I said, I already had a traveller on my boat when I bought it. But you'll have your blocks mounted here using this strap eye, which has been removed from here and pot riveted onto here. Now I would suggest that you don't use the pot rivets that were supplied by Hobie, because you're not going to be able to use them. Don't use a 1/8 rivets. Use perhaps the size up from 1/8. If you've got a pot rivet gun, you should be able to quite adequately use those with your gun. But as you've seen before, the big rivets supplied, you won't be able to use those, because you just won't be able to use them with the pot rivet gun that you've got, unless you've got a big gun. So remove the strap eye from here and you pot rivet it onto here, because this is where your traveller rope is going to go later on. Well, because we're going to be using these bolts to go into the countersink in the bar, we want to make sure that the bolts actually go into the countersink properly and go down far enough. Now the way you can test this is to put a bolt in, put your traveller in the end here and roll it along. If you can feel that it's hitting at all, and in my case some of them were, I'll show you how to get around this. Now if you don't know what a countersink is, it's that little ridge around the hole that the head of the bolt is going to sit in. So that's the part that we have to make a little bit larger, if you have to make sure that the bolt goes down into the traveller bar far enough for the car to miss it. So the first thing to do is to get your traveller track lined up on the back of your rear beam, and what we're going to do is drill 2 holes in the end using a 5.5mm drill bit. Now another little piece of advice: if you're going to your hardware store and you have to buy some drill bits, as I say, you're going to need a 5.5mm drill bit to drill the holes for these bolts. There seems to now be good, better, best with regard to drill bits. The drill bit that I've had in the past, I seem to work alright, but if you're going through a beam like this, I found that the cheaper drill bits, they'll go through the first bit of the beam, but then when they come out the other side, when they start to grab, they have a tendency to just break off. So when you're looking in the shop, ask the guy for the best bit that you can have to do this job. If not, I think all the good ones are actually a darker colour or blue. The silver ones are the cheaper ones. The blue ones seem to be the better ones. Now I'm using a 5.5mm drill bit because that's the drill bit that I've got. But all you really need is something a little bit bigger than 3/16, because you need the hole just a little bit larger than the bolt, because it makes it that much easier to get it down through the bar. Bore a hole. We bore a 5.5mm hole down through here. Just move your bar out the way so you don't damage the top of it, and then bore right through your bottom beam. Drop in your first. That should go in pretty well straight away, which it has. Do the same thing on the other side. Put in a bolt. Now put a nut on each bolt and tighten it securely to make sure that the track doesn't move. That way you'll get all of your holes in the correct place. Now you can go ahead and drill the rest of the holes through your back beam. So you're going to put 2 here, so drill 1 here, miss it, drill 1 here, miss, drill 1 here, miss, drill 1 here, miss, and so on. Once you've drilled a hole in each place, take out your bolt, take out your bolt, and now you've got holes along here that you're going to have to drill right through the beam with. So getting a drill and holding it carefully, you have to drill a straight line. Make sure that your drill is straight when you drill down, because you want this bolt to go straight down through your traveller track. So away you go. Brush away some of the aluminium. Now, as I say, check your bolts and make sure they sit flush. If the bolts are not sitting flush, I'll show you what to do to make sure that your bolts fit. What we're going to do now is to increase the countersink in the traveller track. Just pop this back in here again. Now we don't want to bore this out too much. So just rest it here. This time grab a 6mm drill bit, and all we're going to do is lightly drill out these holes to make sure that our bolts will just drop down in there and the traveller car won't hit. There you go, it's not hitting. Well, do that to every hole that you're going to think you need to countersink. And after you've done that, you're ready to bolt this onto your back beam. Having drilled this and got it ready, and taken it off and got out all the little bits of aluminium that might be sitting in here, what we're going to do now is bolt the track onto the back beam. Now there is a bit of an art to getting the bolts to go straight through. If you get the first one through, if you move the bar up and down a bit and jiggle it, you'll find that bolt's gone through. Now one thing you might like to do, as each bolt goes through, put your washer and your nut. Actually, while we're on the nut, I'll show you. The nut is those little nuts that have a neoprene piece in the end. That stops the bolt from coming loose. So after you've put these through the track, put a nut on each side just to stop them from bouncing out as you get the other ones to go through. So we put a nut on there, grab a screwdriver, hold it down in the track, just underneath, just screw it on gently, and do that for the remainder of the nuts and bolts. It pays to keep the bolts and nuts loose as you're doing this. If you tighten it up, you need to have a bit of play in this traveller track so that you can move the bolts backwards and forwards in their holes so that they'll go through the hole on the other side of the beam. No, I haven't had a haircut especially for this bit. If you think you might have trouble getting the bolt down through the back beam, and some people might, I have a little tool that you can make up to make the job fairly simple. You just need a straight bit of wire. On that wire you attach with using sticky tape, not insulating tape, because sticky tape is nice and thin, of a very thin electrical wire, and then bare the end of that wire. Then put the wire so that it's got a little bit of the wire showing. Then proceed to wrap it round the grooves in the bolt, so it just follows the grooves of the bolt. You don't want it too thick, but what you do want is to have it looking like that. Now to use this little device, just grab yourself a small torch. You hold that under the hole so you can see where the light is, and then you just poke that down through there. Now it's just a matter of threading your bolt down through the hole, down through the bottom. As easy as that. Okay, take it off and it's ready for the next bolt. Now, having got all those nuts and bolts in there, just a matter of tightening them all up. I find it's easier putting a socket underneath on each bolt and just tighten up. Now, one of the things I haven't done, which probably some of you are going to do, and it's good I've made this mistake now, is that I haven't put the traveller car in there. I now should be able to lift up this end far enough to be able to put the traveller on. Let's see. And let's just slide that traveller. Perfect. So, for all those of you who forget to put the traveller on, I guess there's going to be a few, just like me, now I've got the traveller in there. So now that we've got all of our nuts and bolts in, just a matter of going through and tightening them all up. Now, one last little thing. You've got all your nuts in, you've got your traveller there. You just might want to blow out. Make sure you've got no little bits of aluminium. And then do a bit of a test with our traveller. And our little car just moves along there beautifully and smoothly. Okay, so now we're going to install the cleat that goes with the traveller, and I'll show you how to install this so that it'll never come off. Again, the second time I sailed my boat, I broke mine off, and I'll show you why. In most winds, I'd usually sail with 1 foot under the strap. I notice some sailors sail with both feet under the straps. I find that quite awkward. In fact, most of the times when the wind is blowing, I'll have 1 foot there, and then 1 foot I'll have resting on the cleat. Particularly if you're flying a hull, it stops you sliding off the trampoline, and sitting in a position which is like a triangle, it means your body can rock backwards and forwards like that. Rather than having your feet together like that, you find you're rather unstable. Having that foot there means that you're much more stable, but it also means that you're putting a lot of pressure on this cam cleat. And as I said, after about the third time, I just tore this right off. So I'll show you the method to attach this. Then I'll show you how to tidy up your boat a little bit. And now we're going to put on the back swivel cleat. Now this goes on the back beam here. Now Hobie supplies you with some screws to go in here, but to be honest, they look quite feeble, and the problem that I've had with stainless steel screws in the past is the ones that are quite thin, the heads tend to break off. So what we're going to do is we're going to bolt this onto the back as well. Now you've got already a hole here and you may already have a hole here from where your original blocks were. So if you put that through there and then drop that down the hole, you should end up through the hole in the bar, which I'll show you in a minute. What we're going to do is tighten that up. Now we're going to tighten that up so that it's reasonably tight but still allows some movement in here. Now Hobie gives you all these screws to go in here, but quite frankly I can't see why you can't just put that onto there and put the bolts right the way through and just use one set of bolts instead of using two sets of screws. So what we've got now is two holes here. So now we've got that reasonably tight. I've already drilled the holes through here, so you drill down through here, down through the bar, then down through here in the bar. But what we're going to do now is put our rear swivel cleat on there, drop the bolt through, give a bit of a jiggle, we'll tighten that up in a minute, swivel that to the other side, grab the other bolt which is here, and then put that down through there. Okay, so now we've got our three bolts down through the holes, and it's just a matter of make sure that this is seated correctly. Okay, make sure it's seated in that round plastic in there. Okay, now we'll do up our screws. So now we've got that one nice and tight, we'll do the other side. Okay, it's nice and tight. So now we've got all of our bolts tightened up, you can see that the cam cleat is free to rotate around here and everything's working nicely. You notice that the hole at the front hasn't been used. If you really want to, you can put a screw in here. Personally, I don't think it's really necessary, but if you want to, you can put one in there. So that just... Well, now that you've installed your cam cleat, there are a number of different ways that you can use your cam cleat rope. Some people like to use their main sheet rope for the cam cleat. Now with the main sheet rope, you're just going to thread it through here, down through here. My rope is fairly thick, it's easy on my hands. Then down through the back of your traveller car, and then down through here, and then tie a figure 8 on the end of here. Okay, that's using your main sheet rope. Now my main sheet rope is fairly thick. It doesn't really go around this corner all that well, and I've always used a different thickness rope. So another way of doing it is tie a knot in the end of your rope, thread it through here, down through your traveller car. Now you notice this rope is thinner and is going to travel around here much easier. Thread that through here, up through here. Then some people will then join their rope in a knot here. What I like to do is get the traveller right out to the end here and get this traveller rope, and we're going to tie a knot in here just to make sure that the traveller doesn't slam against the side of the boat. There we go, that traveller is now just going to travel a certain distance one way, then the other, and this knot is going to stop it from going any further. You may like to think about doing this. After a while, you may not notice that your knot's a bit loose, or your rope has stretched a bit. Now, in the past I would have recommended that you put a piece of rubber on each end of your track to absorb the shock of your car coming screaming across here and banging into the side of your hull and maybe damaging your traveller car. What I'm recommending now is that you leave these free, so that if you get any water in here, particularly if you're sailing in salt water, the water is allowed to escape. What you don't want is water sitting around in this traveller track and clogging up the track. So what I'd recommend is at each end, just get some rope from your trampoline grommet and thread it down around through here and back under, so that when your car comes down to here, it bangs into the rope. So you can do that on either side of your boat. Okay, so it's got something to run into, but leave these free so that the water is allowed to drain. Now I'll show you what I do with my ropes, as well as how I've tidied up my deck. Down through the middle here, you'll often get water coming up from where your trampoline has been lashed. What I've done is filled in this area here. This white stuff here is core flute. Now, core flute is this sort of stuff. I assume that you can buy this in hardware stores. If not, you can get it. It's usually used on election posters. I've used that through the middle. If you can't get hold of any core flute, just use some fairly rigid plastic and just thread that down between the ropes. Then, to cover up the fact that this doesn't look all that flash, and what I've done is then got some, it's like liner for a drawer, and it's made of rubber. So what I did was cut strips to go down through here. Make sure the strips are just a little bit wider than your gap, and then you can just tuck the edges down through like that. So then you end up with all your middle filled in, and you also stop water from coming through here, and you'll also stop your main sheet rope from finding its way down through here. Now let's come to the back of the boat. Now at the back of the boat I've used core flute again, but I've covered this with fairly thick rubber. It's exercise mat, and again just thread that through. That stops water from coming up the back here, and also stops your main sheet ropes from falling through the back. So do that on both sides, and then in the middle I've cut a T shape which I thread my ropes down. Often when I've got all this rope on the deck, it gets very confused. I like to use different coloured rope for my traveller and for my main, and as you can see, the rope for my traveller is thinner and the rope for my main is much thicker. Now with this T-shaped piece of rubber, I've just screwed this down into the ropes, not through the trampoline, into the ropes. I've I've just threaded under here, but I've just screwed it down on these four corners. Then my ropes, my traveller rope goes through a hole in the back, my main sheet rope goes through a hole in the front. I made these holes using a soldering iron. If you just get this into place, just put your soldering iron down through here and just melt a hole. These ropes go down under the trampoline, and you tie the end of the rope in a knot, and I'll just show you how it's held underneath. So there's just a knot in the rope, and that makes it easy to get out if you need to get it out. It's just threaded around through there once. If you give that a good pull, that's never going to come out, and the main sheet rope just comes down and goes under that way. Now the draw liner down the middle, that's just cut into probably metre long strips, and then where they overlap I've super glued them. Now what this means is that the back of your boat is fairly neat and tidy. Also, it stops your main sheet ropes from falling over the back. Also, as a experiment, I attached some C-profile plastic to the back of the boat to see if it would stop the main sheet from going over the back. This is just screwed not down through the trampoline, but it's screwed through the rope that is used to lash your trampoline. Now, since this has been here, and I've had this here for a couple of months now, I've only had the rope go over the back once, so it seems to be doing the job. So that's something else you might like to consider. So there you have a bit of an overview from the back and how it looks from the front. So now you'll have no water splashing up through the back of your boat and through the middle of your boat. So now you've installed your traveller, I'll just give you some traveller maintenance tips. Now, travellers don't last forever, as I found out. Mine's 10 years old, and I've had to replace traveller cars, these things, twice. If you've never taken out your traveller car, or if you've never seen a traveller that's had a lot of use, there's one. If you look at the wheels are all gnarly and horrible. That's one, and that's the other one. So travellers do go, and if you don't replace them, the main reasons that I've had to replace my traveller track is because I've nailed up my track. I've left a traveller in there for too long when it was on the way out. Now the first indication that is actually on the way out is that it'll jam a couple of times, and you'll be out there thinking that maybe you've got sand in there, as I did. So you put a bit of water in there and maybe it loosens. A few times later, jams again, maybe in the same place. And the third time, as happened with me, it jammed and I flipped the boat. And that time, the actual traveller was actually caught in the track. So I had to take the track off and bang the traveller out with a hammer. That's how hard it was caught in there. And I think that was this one, where most of the little wheels have come off and they were actually in the track, just going backwards and forwards, chewing up the traveller car. If you've had your traveller on there for a couple of years and maybe it's starting to, and you do sail hard and it gets caught a couple of times, just perhaps take out 3 or 4 of your back bolts and take your car out and have a look. I always have one sitting in the shed as a spare. So that's something to look out for. Now before I go, I'll just give you a bit of on-water action to just show you the traveller and the cleat in action. So I'm sailing with my foot under the strap and my back foot leaning against the cam cleat and fully block to block on the mainsail. I'll show you in a minute how easy it is to get into that position using the 6-to-1 blocks. Very easy, just pull it down, crank it down, very easy. But you can imagine the amount of pressure now applied to the traveller in that back traveller track, hence the need to bolt it to the back bar. Now that you've installed your traveller and your track and you've maybe tidied up your deck, it's time to go out and have some fun on your Hobie. So let's hope for some strong wind and as I always say, have fun on your Hobie Wave. Catch you later.